Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to week number 29 of the TheHORRORman's SlashBack Saturday Challenge. This week's slasher movie theme is budget slashers, and I will be giving my review for Hell Week. Okay, so getting into the plot for this one. Rush Week is not going to be the same this year. The urban legend surrounding Rake Family Warehouse has intrigued college students for decades. This year, fraternity president JJ has a hazing ritual planned for his pledges. Little does he know the truth behind the myth is more real than they could have ever imagined. Okay, so getting into my thoughts for this one. With this week's SlashBack Challenge theme of budget slashers, we were simply challenged to watch and review a slasher film that was featured in a multi-pack. I had never seen Hell Week, and I thought this was a pretty cool multi-pack to show because it has some pretty decent B-movie style horror films. The Dark, Grim, and Deadly Instincts are all pretty fun creature features, and The Dark actually features Neve Campbell in one of her early movie roles. Vampire Journals is a good vampire film that was put out by Full Moon. I have never seen The Dead of Night or The Familiar, but I reviewed The Greenskeeper for the SlashBack Saturday Challenge a few weeks ago for standalone slashers. It does have a few issues, but overall, I have a pretty good time with that one. So I have really been enjoying this 8 films horror movie collection, at least the ones that I have seen. It's the Midnight Horror Collection put out by Echo Bridge Entertainment. So that leaves us with Hell Week, and the best way that I can describe Hell Week is that it is a slasher film that they have thrown everything, including the kitchen sink, in it. So there's definitely a lot going on in this one. Something that I wanted to briefly mention is that I actually have a standalone copy for Hell Week that features alternate artwork, but I have to say that I really like the multi-pack artwork much better. And I actually watched both copies of this movie this week just to see if there were any differences in the transfer, and I have to say that I didn't really notice any. So if you have this multi-pack, there's probably really no reason to pick up a standalone copy unless you're a completist like me and you just can't really help yourself. And that really brings up an interesting thought for me, and that's why I find this week's theme to be so interesting. I'm really curious to know what everybody thinks about multi-packs. Do you dig them, or are you more annoyed by them? Myself personally, I really do like having multi-packs in my collection, even though I do consider myself somewhat of a completist and definitely like standalone copies. I also do know that it would be pretty hard to track down each and every horror film that's featured on a multi-pack, especially when I have several multi-packs that feature up to 200 movies apiece. My thoughts on Hell Week is that it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me, and it's definitely going to be one that's hard for me to recommend. On the back of the DVD it says Hell Week was released in 2009. I double checked on IMDb, it says it was released in 2010. But regardless, I do feel like this is one of those movies that gives slasher flicks of this time period a bad reputation. This movie is loaded with annoying characters and atrocious dialogue. And even though I did have a decent time watching it, I do still feel like that it's a pretty forgettable slasher film. For the most part, I do like the way the movie was shot and filmed. I do like the low-budget look to the movie, but there are certain scenes that I did not like at all. For example, I don't like it when they do a split screen and you see something happening from 2 different angles. That's just not really something I like at all. I do, however, like the warehouse setting in this movie. And I also really like that it takes place on Hell Week and leads us up to Halloween. Now, I don't necessarily feel like the movie takes full advantage of this, but at least when we do make it inside the warehouse, we discover that it is loaded with psychopaths who each one is wearing their own unique costume. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I did mention before that this movie has everything including the kitchen sink. We also have ghosts that appear and disappear, and we also have vampires in the basement. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the cast of characters we have in Hell Week. And this is not really something I'm going to get too deep into because I have already mentioned that all the characters in this movie are super annoying. And none more so than JJ, the main character of this movie's storyline. He is the fraternity president, he's the one that puts all the parties together, and none of his friends like him. They all talk about him behind his back. Even his own girlfriend questions his loyalty to her, and for very good reason. And speaking of JJ's girlfriend, she has two best friends who pretty much do nothing but complain about JJ for what feels like the entire movie. Overall, I just didn't really enjoy the characters in this movie, and I had already mentioned that I thought the dialogue was absolutely atrocious. We have a large party going on where the guys are hitting on the girls, and these pickup lines are just absolutely cringeworthy, as is a lot of the other dialogue throughout the movie. So overall, it's really hard for me to judge the acting on such bad writing. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the most important part of a slasher movie, that is the killer and the kills. So we have a pretty large group of killers in this movie. The leader is a guy who's wearing a phantom-looking mask. He often smokes a cigar, and he does have some supernatural abilities. For example, in the movie, he does a very simple chant and is able to get one of JJ's friends to become a part of his group of psychopaths. Among this group of killers, we have a pretty brute-looking clown, and he's definitely my favorite one. We have another guy who's wearing a really cool mask that I can't really describe, but I really do like it. And the weakest of the bunch is a grandpa-looking character. And I do consider this to be the main group, but we do have quite a few other oddities around this warehouse, and I did mention before, we have vampires in the basement. And as far as the kills go in this movie, it has a pretty decent body count, but unfortunately with the way some of the kills were shot and filmed, we don't really get a good look at some of them. They either happen too quickly, or they are filmed in an odd angle, and we don't really get to see much, or we have the split screen kill, where we see the kill from two different angles. I just thought the kills could have been better in this movie, but my favorite one would definitely be the guy getting chopped in half with a machete. Overall, Hell Week was a mixed bag for me, and even though I had a pretty decent time watching it, it's definitely one that's going to be hard for me to recommend. But I definitely recommend picking up this 8-movie horror collection. It's the Midnight Horror Collection released by Echo Bridge Entertainment. I'm going to give Hell Week a 5 out of 10, so please like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know if you have seen Hell Week or any of the other movies on this pack, and I would like to thank you all for watching.